Hi guys, it's Cam, and today I kind of wanted to talk about maladaptive daydreaming. I understand that a lot of you may not know what maladaptive daydreaming is or have already these preconceived notions of what maladaptive daydreaming is, but this video is to be a crash course on what MD is, and I've talked to Dr. Sommer. I have his personal anecdotal evidence of what he thinks is going on with MD, and yeah, I have talked to literal professionals. Well, only one professional. I've only talked to Dr. Sommer, but I hope with this video that people can learn more about it, and that with the research that I have, that people can actually take it seriously, because I understand, like, I have a VTuber model and I'm talking to you through it, and I'm not talking to you through, like, an actual person. I understand that, but I don't feel comfortable showing my face, and I don't want to show my face, so you'll have to bear with me with a VTuber model. Also might be a little bit interesting if you like VTuber models, but that's just my personal anecdotal evidence. If you hear background noise, that is because it is dinner time and I am skipping dinner, not to just make this video, but also because I took a shot and I'm actually not that hungry right now, so I'm skipping dinner. But eat if you need to. Eat, please. And I live with a bunch of other people. I'm usually whispering in my videos because this is an ASMR channel, but for right now, this is just a regular video of where I can be as loud as I want and make as much mouth noise as I can, because that's just how regular videos are. So I wanted to first discuss what MD is, and this is taken from actual resources. I will be linking them down below, what the resources are, and like, it looks like a research paper is what I'm getting at, is that I have all of these sources linked in the description, and it'll look like a research paper. It'll sound like a research paper. And I'm hoping to get some interviews, if this video doesn't already have interviews, with people that struggle with MD and that, you know, how long they've struggled with it across a broad of age ranges and, you know, things like that. So, reading directly from the text, it says, Maladaptive daydreaming, MD, is a clinical condition characterized by pathologically immersive use of imagination and fantasy. People suffering from MD display an intense fantasy activity that usually involves highly vivid and complex scenarios, which interferes with important areas of individuals' functioning, such as learning, work, and relationships. In MD, the fantasy activity occurs for significant periods, frequently consuming more than half of the individual's waking time, and may also replace human interactions. Listening to evocative music and kinesthetic activity seems to facilitate the absorption into one's own daydreams, and fantasies are almost always associated with MD. I will put on the screen the quote from the text so that you can read it just exactly as I've read it. So, what exactly is kinesthetic movement? Kinesthetic movement, or kinesthesia, is the ability to sense motion of a joint or limb. For me, in my experience with MD, I don't pace. That is a very wide, conception about MD, where that people pace, and that's usually a normal assumption because that's what people normally say, that's what they do. I don't. This is gonna sound silly, this is gonna sound absolutely silly, but I get on my phone and I play Subway Surfers. That's it. That's literally it. I play Subway Surfers, and I can do that for hours at a time. And I listen to music, and part of that is the kinesthetic movement of my thumbs moving. I have POTS, so therefore I cannot stand for long periods at a time. So I had to learn a way around it, and I didn't know that I had POTS at the time. I just knew that I couldn't stand. So I just laid down and played Subway Surfers. It sounds ridiculous and it sounds like you're wasting your time. I wasted a lot of time with MD. It's not something that I'm proud of or that I want to say, oh, MD is such a fun and wonderful thing. It's not. It's not. But that's just my own conjecture. So, here's a few categories of MD that I want to talk about, such as behavioral addiction, since MD has been classified as a behavioral addiction in the past, and I emphasize in the past. Several behaviors can produce short-term rewards that are sufficiently potent and reinforce perseverance despite concerns about unfavorable effects such as compromised functioning and weakened behavior regulation. So that's in relation to behavioral addiction of just like, it's these short-term rewards that reinforce these behaviors of like unfavorable consequences. So that's essentially what behavioral addiction is. Then we have dissociative absorption, which is defined as, indeed, daydreaming and absorption experiences have long been identified as dissociative in nature. The absorption imaginative involvement factor of dissociative experience scale is composed of common benign experiences such as being engrossed in a movie or missing part of a conversation. This is part of Dr. Sommer's paper on maladaptive daydreaming and ontological analysis treatment rationale, a pilot case report. And he's right. He's right about that. Where that, in my case, dissociative absorption has been mainly the main case of just like you are very engrossed in a daydream and it becomes dissociative in nature. But that's just conjecture. That isn't the actual. That is just my own anecdotal evidence. That is not me saying this is what's true. This is just me saying, hey, I agree with what he's saying, but this is what the research says. Now we move on to maladaptive daydreaming versus immersive daydreaming. I will link here and also put in the video a clip of Dr. Sommer's video on immersive and maladaptive daydreaming. But basically what I have written down is a form of dissociative absorption, but not to the extent of it being MD. Immersive daydreaming can turn into maladaptive daydreaming, especially if it is done in long periods of time and disrupts daily functioning. Immersive is not negative, while maladaptive is.
Hi everyone, I would like to talk briefly to you today about normality and abnormality in vivid daydreaming. You are often referred to maladaptive daydreaming when you talk about the ability to engage in very vivid, absorptive, immersive form of fantasy. But this in itself is not a pathological form of daydreaming. Most of people daydream daily. Their minds wander. It's not actually a daydreaming. It's about thinking mostly about things to do, about what to prepare for dinner, about conversations we've had, about planning something. Most people call it daydreaming, but it's actually mind wandering. It is something that happens when one is not actually active and focusing on and concentrating on a task. This is an off-task sort of mental behavior. Maladaptive daydreaming involves a concentrated effort, a mental, an intentional mental activity that is purposeful. So it's not just mind wandering when when the brain is idle or doing, not requiring it to do anything productive. The form of fantasy that people experience in maladaptive daydreaming is very intense, very vivid, and often involves fantastical stories. But the question is that in itself a problem? Is that in itself maladaptive? What does the word maladaptive mean? Maladaptive means actually that it's not adaptive, it's not normal in the sense that it is not conducive to creativity, to productivity. On the contrary, it is some sort of an impairment, an impediment on normal functioning.
So I want to get on to the common questions that people have, like, and I'm gonna link the Reddit, and I'm gonna post this on Reddit too, so that people can see this as like a like, this is gonna be like the first thing that you view when you get to like a Maladaptive Daydreaming 101. So the first question is, am I a maladaptive daydreamer? I won't go over the scale in depth, and since it is not a diagnosable disorder, even when it is quote-unquote diagnosed by a professional, it is still a professional self-diagnosis at best. So to say I have MD and treat it as a disorder, it's not diagnosable. But there is a scale called the Maladaptive Daydreaming scale. There is both a 16 question version and a 5 question version of it online that you can take for free and see if you have MD. Now, like I said, this is just self-diagnosis at best, and if you want to say you have it, you can. There is literally no consequences to saying you have MD. I am basically self-diagnosed with MD, but I have talked to Dr. Stromer before, and he treats me as if I have MD and that I have been diagnosed with it. So it's basically just a professional self-diagnosis at best. Now, I have not talked to him in person. It's been mostly over emails, and I did email him once about like the differences between dissociation and behavioral addiction and then dissociative absorption. So I have emailed him multiple times before, but other than that, I have not actually talked to him face to face. If this possibly blows up and I do get a chance to talk to him face to face, I would love to talk to him. Like, I'm a psychology student. I look up to this man. Like, I would love to talk to him. But this is just an informal video about MD and just trying my best to answer these questions. So, what causes MD? Taken from a paper called Maladaptive Daydreaming Among Patients with Dissociative Identity Disorder, it says, on the shorthand, lots of things. So unemployment, loneliness, suicidality, and childhood trauma can all cause MD. But this is where my next question comes in of, I think I have MD, but I've never experienced childhood trauma. Could I still have it? I'm not going to say no, because that's not true. There's lots of people that have not had childhood trauma, and they have MD. But it comes from, if it doesn't come from childhood trauma, then it comes from a myriad of other things, like lack of socialization. My puppy is in here with me, and she wants outside, and I don't want to let her outside because she'll just bark. So, but, it'll come from a myriad of other things as well, where that it'll be like lack of socialization, loneliness, depression, unemployment, as I said, suicidality. So, like, it's not just from childhood trauma, but childhood trauma can be a large factor in maladaptive daydreaming. As for me, I had childhood trauma from a very severe incident when I was younger, and I developed it. I'm not going to explain how I developed it. I just know that one day I was just like, daydreaming is the only thing that helps me cope. So, how do I stop daydreaming, and can it be cured? I will answer this later. So another question is, why should I stop? Well, maladaptive, the word maladaptive, is described as marked by poor or inadequate adaptation. And if it was good, then it wouldn't be called maladaptive daydreaming. That is my one thing that I'm going to say to it, is that if it wasn't maladaptive daydreaming, then it would be called immersive daydreaming. But it's called maladaptive, so therefore, it is bad because of the word maladaptive. And a lot of people, especially on Tumblr, like to use the term MADD, basically meaning maladaptive daydreaming disorder. If it wasn't a disorder, then it wouldn't be maladaptive. Is MD a real disorder? Is it real? In my opinion, yes. Is it a disorder? Not yet. Common triggers can be enhanced or maintained by music, can be triggered or maintained or enhanced by repetitive movement, such as pacing, rocking, or hand movements. Daydreams can be accompanied by vocal noises or facial expression, such as whispering, laughing, or mouthing words. Often daydreams when distressed or bored. And daydream immersion and length intensify when alone. This can all be found on the Reddit post. Like, there's a Reddit post on the Maladaptive Daydreaming subreddit. That's where I got all of these triggers from. So, are there comorbidities with maladaptive daydreaming? Well, in a survey done by Dr. Sommer, Herskew, and Samara, and Abura, maladaptive daydreaming can be positively associated with depression, anxiety, dissociation, obsessive compulsive disorder, ADHD, general psychopathology, psychotic symptoms, autism spectrum disorder, and traumatic experiences. Some effects were moderated by sample type, age, and gender. So, what's the percentage rate of people with maladaptive daydreaming and then the comorbidity? Well, you can have ADHD, for example. I have ADHD, and that is about a 77% chance of also having MD. Anxiety is 72%, depression is 67%, OCD is 54%, and there hasn't been a lot on dissociation with, like, this is all taken from the same resource called comorbidity of daydreaming disorder, and these all basically just talk about there was no subsection of like dissociation, like dissociative identity disorder and maladaptive daydreaming, or PTSD, for example, and maladaptive daydreaming. So this is where we come to the part of, so now we come to MD being tied to loneliness and emotional dysregulation. In that same paper done by Dr. Sommer, Herskew, Samara, and Abura, Maladaptive Daydreaming and Psychopathology, a meta-analysis, they say, our secondary analysis examined other psychological problems. We found a positive association between MD and difficulties in emotion regulation, loneliness, dysfunctional personality traits, negative affect, pathological celebrity worship, personality disorder, shame, somatic symptoms, problematic internet use, and psychological distress. Additionally, there is a negative association between MD and self-efficacy and self-esteem. And then another resource, the same resource says, accordingly, MD is associated with unemployment and suicidality. It is also associated with deficit emotional regulation, narcissism, and may follow childhood trauma. In another resource, it says, a path analysis revealed that loneliness and emotional dysregulation mediated with the relationship between autism spectrum disorder traits and maladaptive daydreaming symptoms. Specifically, while all variables were positively associated with MD symptoms, ASD traits were negatively associated with MD symptoms after accounting for loneliness and emotional dysregulation. This is where the part of, is MD associated with childhood trauma, comes into play. Unlike other dissociative disorders, no evidence has yet shown that childhood trauma is either sufficient or necessary for the development of MD. This is Dr. Sommer's analysis in Maladaptive Daydreaming Ontological Analysis, Treatment Rationale, a pilot case report. So, now I want to talk about the common misconceptions and myths of maladaptive daydreaming. A lot of people think if I stop daydreaming, then I'll lose my creativity. Daydreaming a lot compared to severe disorders like schizophrenia. Or, oh, I daydream too, similar to the, oh, everyone's a little autistic, but it's not the same. That if you try hard enough, you can willpower it away. And a personal anecdote is that daydreaming isn't bad, and trying to eliminate it is impossible, but people do need help if it interferes with their life. So, what is the difference between dissociation and behavioral addiction, and which one is it? So I have my own personal anecdote of types of daydreamers. One is called addictive daydreaming, the other one is called dissociative daydreaming. So daydreaming that is similar to addiction, can't function without daydreaming, dysfunctional without daydreaming, and irritability when not daydreaming. This can be backed up by a research article called Maladaptive Daydreaming as a New Form of Behavioral Addiction, and Dr. Sommer's piece on Maladaptive Daydreaming Ontological Analysis, Treatment Rationale in a Pilot Case Report. There is another one called Dissociative Daydreaming, which is daydreaming that is similar to dissociation. You're on autopilot mode, depersonalization, daydreaming, feeling like things aren't real. And so, in a study by Dr. Sofer Dudek and Dr. Sommer, it basically discussed that maladaptive daydreaming is a dissociative disorder. And in another paper, it says that maladaptive daydreaming is so closely associated with dissociation and dissociative disorders. And in that same paper by Dr. Sommer, called Maladaptive Daydreaming Ontological Analysis, Treatment Rationale, a Pilot Case Report. So these next two terms that I'm going to discuss is coined by a friend of mine and someone who is in the Maladaptive Daydreaming server called Red Halo. He said that there are two types of daydreamers, or types of daydreaming called active daydreaming and passive daydreaming. I basically gave them those names, I think, or he gave them those names, but the general concept is coined by him. So active daydreaming is daydreaming that takes over executive function and is deemed active, more commonly associated with addictive daydreaming. That's my personal anecdote. And then passive daydreaming is daydreaming that does not take over executive function and is deemed passive, more commonly associated with dissociative daydreaming. So that's what these two terms are called. I don't have any personal anecdote for them or against them, or I don't also have any resources backing them up because people don't talk about it. But with Dr. Sommer, I asked him a interesting question about maladaptive daydreaming and whether or not it is behavioral addictive or dissociative, and he said two things. One, at present, MD research is moving beyond early descriptive work. Recent studies focus on improving measurement, distinguishing immersive from maladaptive daydreaming, and examining common co-occurring features such as dissociation, ADHD, OCD spectrum symptoms, depression, and anxiety. There is also a growing interest in phenomenology, including absorption, narrative immersion, and the role of fantasy in emotional regulation. Overall, the field is increasingly attentive in heterogeneity rather than a single explanatory model. The second thing that he says is early formulations highlighted addiction-like features because many people report craving, loss of control, and impairment. Over time, dissociative processes such as deep absorption and detachment from early internal reality have appeared more central for many individuals. My current view is that MD is best understood as a multidimensional condition. Addiction-based can still be helpful for some, while dissociation offers the broadest framework that can integrate several of the core features. So, what are some therapies and treatments for MD? These are personal anecdotes from a survey that I took. And some people said EMDR, EFT, keeping busy, journaling, socialization, less screen time, and quitting cold turkey. Now, if you need me to explain what EMDR is, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Therapy that is empirically validated treatment for trauma, including some negative life experiences such as commonly present in medical practice. EFT is called emotionally focused therapy, and a humanistic evidence-based approach to psychotherapy, drawing primarily from attachment theory to facilitate the creation of secure, vibrant connection with the self and others. For me, in my way of dealing with MD, was that I basically got really busy, and I also got diagnosed with ADHD around that time, and so I started taking Ritalin. Noticed an immediate difference with not daydreaming and not feeling that need to. I am not saying that Ritalin helps with MD, it just helped with mine. I am not going to universalize that for everyone. In a research paper by Dr. Sommer, the same one that I keep mentioning, Maladaptive Daydreaming Ontological Analysis, Treatment Rationale in a pilot case report. Basically says motivational interviewing, cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness training. Now, motivational interviewing is a client-centered yet directive method for enhancing intrinsic motivation to change by exploring and resolving client ambivalence, which also then leads to open-ended questions, reflective listening, affirmation, and summarization. CBT interventions were included to teach the client, the participant in this research study, contingent self-reward, time and task management, implementation of learned relaxation and mindfulness skills, problem solving, and planning for future academic work and work-related goals. Mindfulness training is a psychological process of Buddhist origins. It often involves shifting one's attention to experiences occurring in the present moment. Mindfulness can be developed by practicing meditation training. And in another research paper by Herskey, Sommer, and Silver-Dudek and Fetterman, basically says self-monitoring is a core element of self-regulation and self-management. It is a technique recommended for promoting habit change and involves the monitoring, documentation, and elevated awareness of the target's behavior. So, some resources on MD, and I will link them down below, is the International Society for Maladaptive Daydreaming, International Consortium of Maladaptive Daydreaming Research, Reddit r/MaladaptiveDaydreaming, and Discord, which is the Maladaptive Daydreaming server. And I will link all of these down below. I get no incentive of doing this. This is basically a passion project, and I wanted to just give more of an overview of what MD is. If there is an interview, then it will be right after this segment, but if not, then this is the end of the video. I hope you guys have a good day and or night, and I will see you guys next time.